So you're getting a bit of the those are more in the Chris category again as well. But my favorite name thing isn't actually a first name thing, it's the middle name aspect of how there's two guys in the All Whites whose middle name is Zen. There's Nando Zen Pijnaker and there's I think it is Joe Zen Robert Bell or something. He has two middle names, but somehow Joe Bell and Nando Pijnaker both have the middle name Zen, Z-E-N. So nice and mindful of them, I suppose. Good stuff there. Um, yeah, Chris Wood has he's equaled his best tally in a Premier League season, 14 goals. He did it last season with Nottingham Forest. He also did it in his best year with Burnley. He has 16 games to go with which to add to that. At the start of the season, he was talking, like he did interviews, he was talking about like, well, my target is to try get to 20 goals this season. And at the time that seemed like, yeah, sure. Like, you believe in yourself, sweet as, that's cool. Little bit of an ambitious target. Right now, it feels like he might push 25. He might push closer to 30. I mean, he probably won't get that far, but he should get to 20. He should get to that mark. And there's only, well, I looked this up not that long ago. I think there's 50 players who have scored 20 goals in a Premier League season. So this is just Premier League. This is an all English top division, but the 30 odd years or whatever it is that the Premier League's been around. Chris Wood could join that club. Chris Wood's also getting closer and closer every week, it seems, to catch in. Because, whenever he scores, you get a bunch of people in the around New Zealand looking up the Premier League list of most all-time goals. Oh, he's up to 71st equal, or he's up to 68th equal kind of thing with each thing, which seems like a bit, I don't know, that seems too scarce for me to care too much about him climbing. He's not in the top 10 or anything like that, but I am keeping a close eye out on when he gets to 92 Premier League goals, which will probably be next season. I don't think he'll quite get there this year. He'd need to score another 10 or so from here to get there. But if he gets to 92 goals, he equals Mark Viduka, who's the top scoring Australian in the Premier League history. So if we can say that Chris Wood has then become the all-time leading Australasian goal scorer, not just in the Premier League, not just the top Oceania guy as he is right now. I think that's something a little bit more substantial to hang a hat on. He scored in 4 consecutive games, by the way, which is the second time this season that he scored in 4 consecutive Premier League games. He did it once last season as well, and he also did that once with Burnley. So the 4th time in his career he scored in 4 consecutive games. He's never gone 5 though. So that's the one for the next game to keep an eye out. Whatever has swings around next weekend. I don't think there's midweek games this week. So next weekend, he's going for 5 in a row, going for another personal best there. And if he does do that, it will also, of course, be his personal best for goals in a season, because that'd be his 15th for the season. He's got 14 from 22 games. He's 16 games to go. We're only like 60% of the way through the season. There's a huge chunk left to go, and he keeps scoring goals. He just keeps doing them Chris Wood goals as well. This one was just like prime Woodsy. Yeah, like there's little bit of hold up play, nice switch out to the side, but then as soon as he does that, he's gassing it to get into the middle on the end of the cross, which he does. Runs into a defender, shoves him out of the way, gets up there, wins the header, puts it in the bottom corner. A little bit of a fingertip from the keeper, but couldn't keep it out. Just prime Chris Wood areas, and he's doing it every week at the moment. Like there's at least one of those chances every week. He actually missed a good chance later on in this game, and also they had a goal disallowed where he was called offside from a free kick, and they said he was interfering. He was offside, but they said he was interfering, which I thought was pretty tenuous. But so it goes. There's Nottingham Forest went on and won anyway, so they won 3-2 against Southampton. They have taken 34 points out of a possible 36 points against teams currently in the bottom half of the table. So they're beating everyone they're expected to win, and they're winning games against a few teams they're not expected to beat as well. So I think they're second equal now. Arsenal went back ahead of them, but Arsenal only drew. So Forest are equal level, but behind on goal difference. So they're second equal, but third, which is still heavily embedded in the Champions League places.
You just dropped like 50 facts about Chris Wood and Nottingham Forest there, so that's good stuff. You're obviously fired up for Chris Wood scoring a goal. I will tinker with something you just said there, because you said Chris Wood ran to the middle. But he's in the middle the whole time. He does not leave the space of the goalposts.
Yeah,
He moves backwards to get the ball to distribute it wide, and then and that's in the middle. That's top of the box. Then
yeah, you're right. He actually just drops
top of the
vertical. He doesn't swing.
he goes from top of the box straight into the penalty spot, gets the ball back, scores the goal. So that's just prime Chris Wood. Fantastic movement, but there's not a lot of movement. He's just going
Mm.
back and forward in the middle of the field, and his teammates know how to give him the ball. What's the status of the Chris Wood offside number this season? Do you have that handy? Because it is something very interesting. When Chris Wood wasn't scoring as many goals, he was the king of the offside. But that one could draw a connection between being offside a whole lot and not scoring many goals. Like, that's not great striker play, is it? If you're offside, you're ruining it for your team. It's like bowling a no ball, maybe. You do want a couple because you want to push the line, figuratively and literally. You want to push the line. So you do want a couple no balls every so often, but you don't necessarily want them all because those no balls are runs and they stop your wickets. Like an offside does stop a goal. So I'm curious to know if Chris Wood is scoring more goals with more or less offsides than usual.
Yeah, it was in the Burnley days where he was getting the most offsides. And then when he's playing with Newcastle, they were asking him to do a slightly different role. And so he wasn't getting offside very much. And then he had a year or so where he wasn't playing as many minutes, so he couldn't get as many offsides. You'll be pleased to know this season, right back up there. He's second in the Premier League for offside so far. He's been offside 20 times in his 22 games. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's out in front with 27. But he's getting offside and he's not scoring that many goals. Chris Wood's getting offside and he's scoring a lot of goals. It was a goal, like I said, there's a goal today which got disallowed because of him being offside. But also, for the most part, bigger picture aspect there is you get a lot of if he's getting called offside a lot, that means he's hovering around the top of the defensive line. He's getting as far forward as he can, which means he's trying to get as close to the goal as he can, which ties it back into what he's saying about his movements. Because he's not the bursting sprints and behind the defense that you get from some guys. These little subtle movements, these very efficient movements. It's like a couple meters here or there, just get just enough space in order to be able to get a clean swing of the leg or a jump up unobstructed to win the header or whatever it takes to get on the end of a cross or just pounce on a loose ball or something in the area. Like sharp, smart, anticipating, efficient movements is basically his textbook at the moment. Pretty much every goal he scores, you see something like that where there's just a clever little burst or a late step sideways or whatever it takes to just create that little bit of separation from his defender, get a shot away. That's what he does. That's what he's been doing. Did it again this morning, scored another goal this morning, and had got to add to his offside tally this morning as well.
I also think Nando Pijnaker, of fantastic first name swag. I'm open to the idea. In fact, I do believe right now Nando Pijnaker is the best player for Auckland FC. And if he's the best player for Auckland FC, he is one of the best players in the A-League. Nando Pijnaker. Where does he rank for you as far as centre-backs go? Because I think the centre-back bracket is good because Sakai is probably the leading candidate for the best Auckland FC player, which makes him the Auckland FC representative in the best A-League player stakes. But Sakai wasn't playing on the weekend for their 3-0 win. So let's just stick with centre-backs. Like, I'll say Nando Pijnaker, best player in the A-League. That's all good, but that's a sizzling one. Where does Nando Pijnaker rank for you for the best centre-backs in the A-League and maybe even the best players in the A-League?
Well, there's another angle there as well, is where he ranks as a centre back for the All Whites, which is like they've kind of set up. We've seen this over the last few tours. There's just been they don't necessarily have a combination in mind, but they have the four best centre backs pretty well set up in mind. Well, and Nando Pijnaker is one of them. Michael Boxall is one of them. Long-time MLS veteran at this point. Boxall, experienced international player, like top. Talking about players like Kiwi sporting athletes with big mana, Michael Boxall is definitely one of those. Finn Sermon is in the top four. Finn Sermon, who was one of the best centre backs in the A League, and therefore got a big move to the MLS as well, to where he's playing for Portland Timbers now. And then Tyler Bindon playing for Reading, who is getting linked all over the show to English Championship clubs. So that's the caliber that Nando Pijnaker's, got himself alongside, and has been alongside for quite a while. Like he was in that criteria before Finn Sermon or Tyler Bindon were in the squad. They're younger than him. So there's some company that he's keeping there. None of those guys are A-League battlers. Those guys are all players who have actually, well, Boxall played A-League, Finn Sermon's played A-League. Both of them were excellent in the A-League, and therefore they've gone up and above. Nando Pijnaker currently being excellent in the A-League. So there's an idea of the trajectory, but it's also an idea of just like, yeah, he can be he can be and should be one of the best players in the competition for his position, if that's the kind of that's the tier that he sits in with the national team. You've got a little bit of a back and forth balance there. You can sort of compare that. I mean, Dan Hall was pretty good alongside him for the start of the season. But I think that also plays into Nando Pijnaker's reputation as well, is that Hall got injured. Hall was missing. They had to recalibrate. Nando Pijnaker stayed amazing without Dan Hall alongside him. They had a little bit of a dip there when Sakai was playing centre back, because A, you didn't have Sakai at right back, and B, he's just not quite as much of a natural centre back. He was out of position and they were getting caught out a bit. Tommy Smith stepped up alongside him, and they've gone back to being the defensively outstanding team that they were at the start of the season, in which, I mean, the fact that he scored 3 goals helps his cause as well. But even just speaking defensively, it feels like Pijnaker's been a bigger presence than Hall, because he's been there the whole time. He's been a bigger presence than Smith because he's been there the whole time. He's a centre back rather than a fullback, so he's a little bit more responsible for the things, but for the defensive record. But also, it feels like he has had more of an impact on the clean sheets that they're keeping, the defensive record that they have, than Alex Paulson has as well. And we know how good Alex Paulson is, but it doesn't feel like he's having to make the same saves necessarily last season. He's still been fantastic, but I agree that Nando Pijnaker has probably been better. And I think I think I probably would lean towards him as like the mid-season player of the year for them so far. I mean, those 3 goals can't be discounted either, because those have all been very important goals. And he's just, he's dominating in a way where he's always looked like a player who has that potential, but either a mix between like maybe wasn't playing at the highest standards necessarily, or I think maybe because he's quite a big physical lad. I think maybe he also took a few years to sort of like physically come into his own and get his balance and his full fitness and stuff going. So I think that's helped him as well. He's just at that age now where he's ready to enter his peak as a centre back. So yeah, he's outstanding. Like he wins the challenges on the ground. He is fantastic in the air. And he's a good passer as well, and he's scoring goals. So what more can you possibly ask for from an A-League centre-back?
We did tease a bit of Nando Pijnaker earlier in the show, and he was very good for Auckland FC in their victory over Melbourne City, 3-0. I believe Auckland FC now second on the ladder. And I was going to say at that stage that Auckland FC have only conceded 9 goals this season, and they're the only team below 13. So Auckland FC's conceded 9 goals, and there is a slight disparity in games played, but they've conceded 9 goals, and Perth Glory's conceded 35. That's ridiculous. One thing that was... Shout out Ollie Sale, though. We do love a bit of Ollie Sale.
He didn't concede all of those, though,
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about, like, because we had Jesse Randall, that he made his, I think it was his starting debut, first start of the season for Auckland FC. And this is something we can't be overlooked with Auckland FC. They are developing local talent. Like Jesse Randall's come in. We had McKinley step in a few games ago. Who else did I have?
Louis Toomey, Adama Koulibaly getting a red card on debut a couple of weeks ago.
Right, Koulibaly. And we also had Max Mata. And he started up front, which was, I thought, a interesting development there. He's not a youngster on the rise being developed by Auckland FC, but he is a Kiwi striker who, to me, he resembles Chris Wood in just that he's like big enough, but he's also quick and he's mobile. He's a good mover, but he's big enough and strong enough to hold the ball and get into those positions where he needs to score the goals. I was pretty impressed with Max Mata, especially when you're adding him to like Logan Rogerson and that attacking group.
I thought having spoken about Nando Pijnaker already, it's the other guy who was most interesting of the was Max Mata there, which is fitting because Max Mata and Nando Pijnaker seem to do everything together anyway. They've played at like it's like their third or fourth different club that they've played together at the same time, as well as I'll say it again, making their all-whites debut in the exact same game too. Like these two are just kind of a little bit joined at the hip. But Pijnaker's been amazing, playing pretty much every minute for Auckland FC this season. Max Mata's been stuck on the bench, and he was a little bit of an injury at one point, so he wasn't getting, he wasn't even in the squad for a few of those games at the start, and then he was getting 10 minutes maybe. And the thing is, they've got an import player in his position, so he was actually, before Guillermo Mai turned up, Max Mata was starting all of the preseason games and getting good minutes then. But he was it took him a little time for his opportunity to swing around. He got it finally against Melbourne City, and I agree. I thought he was pretty awesome in that game.
Max Mata and Guillermo Mai did play alongside each other against Melbourne City, though, didn't they?
Yeah, sort of. The thing with Max Mata's skill set is, I think there is a comparison to be made there with Chris Wood, is that they are similar players in how they operate. So Mata is not as big or as strong as Chris Wood, but he is a very good hold-up player. And you saw this when he was playing for Sligo Rovers in Ireland. Like, very good at holding the ball up, but he would probably drop a little bit more than Wood would like to, maybe in a way that Wood used to, but doesn't so much do anymore. Like, drop deeper to collect that, I don't know, the long ball from the defense, or the entry into the final third, as they might say these days, from the midfield or whatever. Like, drop in a little bit deeper, hold it up, lay it off. Or he wins a lot of headers, and he is a bit of a merchant in the box in terms of poaching on. So he's not as good of a finisher as Chris Wood, but he's good enough. And so I think one of the tricks with him is when you've got, like we've seen with Chris Wood, when you've got that type of player, you do sort of need to play to their strengths if you want to get their strengths out, because they're not necessarily the most versatile to play in other styles. So it's been a little bit of, because Guillermo Mai is quite different. He also does like to drop deep, but he doesn't drop deep, hold it up. He doesn't drop deep, win headers, flick-ons and stuff like that. He drops deep, turns on the ball, whips it out around place, and maybe you get a similar result, but it's a different way of going about it. And he's not necessarily the poacher in the box as well. He'll drift around a little bit and let other players get into those areas, which we have actually seen at times. Like, Jake Brimmer's benefited from that, playing behind Guillermo Mai and then making runs past him into the area to be the guy himself poaching on a few of these chances. But yeah, Brimmer was out injured for this game, and they decided to mix it up a little bit with Liam Gillian playing off the bench for the first time, which, like, I'm a little bit surprised that hadn't already happened. I think he's the kind of player who is going to be equally impactful off the bench as he would starting. No reason not to mix it up a little bit, but I guess they're working with a winning formula, so they didn't want to change too much. Nada Moreno also dropping to the bench, so Logan Rogerson's back in there. Jesse Randall's getting the start, and Max Mata mostly playing alongside Guillermo Mai, but I got the feeling like Mai was the guy who was dropping in a little bit more to let Mata be the guy getting on the end of crosses, and that was working because Mai dropped deep and scored a banger of a goal, and Mata stayed forward, won a couple of headers, and also which both drew very good saves, and then also scored, poaching from a corner, hovering around the 6-yard box. So we saw a little bit of a different wrinkle from Auckland FC in their attack. This is not necessarily a setup we've seen a lot of before, outside of maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes of games, because there have been other times Mata's come on with Mai still on the field, and they've both played kind of as a front two building out this combination a little bit, but we've only really seen that in glimpses at the end of games when they're throwing caution to the wind. Hadn't seen it from the start. Saw it here. Oh yeah, I quite liked it. Quite like the different angle, and I don't know. I mean, Jake Brimmer's really good, and Jake Brimmer comes back maybe next week, maybe down the line. Don't know how bad his injury was, but he's probably pushing for a starting spot there. Cam Howieson's also back now. So he is someone who could also start. You can start in that Gallegos kind of role or a little bit deeper, but he can also start in that Brimmer number 10 role. So they got options there. Gillian as well, frankly, could play through the middle if you wanted him to. Louis Toomey could play through in that role if you wanted. Like they've got guys who can do that stuff, so they can mix it up. But it's good to see. I think this is quite valuable from Auckland FC is to see that they have bit more variation in their attack now than perhaps we realized a week ago. Like they've been able to work that out a little bit more, add another string to the bow.
In my expert in football opinion, I prefer the striker playmaker dynamic rather than having Mai and Brimmer as like two playmakers in that attacking. Like I guess in theory, like one of them's the false nine type of stuff, but I just prefer having the striker and the playmaker complementing each other. So maybe I'm a bit old school with just a true blue striker, and then you put the razzle dazzle playmaker, which to me is beside them. Well, first of all, what role did Randall play? And then I think I saw Toomey, because I've only seen Toomey previously playing in the wide spots. Did he get a bit more central against City?
Yeah, he did. I can't remember when that was that they subbed him on. I don't think he got huge minutes or anything. But yeah, he was playing through the middle a bit more, which is more of his natural position. If you see him for the certainly for the Wellington Phoenix reserves back in the day, but especially when he was playing his best domestic football for Eastern Suburbs last year. Well, yeah, 2023 now, the year before last now. That takes a couple of weeks of adjustment every year, but that's much more. He is kind of like let him loose, playing off like at the top of the midfield and behind the striker, get lots of touches, drifting around. Sure, like let him move wide and collect the ball and whatever, or make runs in those areas, like a bit of a free license. But he's definitely, his best stuff for Eastern Suburbs was playing in that number 10 role, like as the kind of the focal point of their attack. He's not gonna have to do a lot to earn that kind of responsibility in the A League, obviously, but that's nice little positive development for him as well, because I guess when you're one of those younger fringe players on the bench, you just want to be able to have as many different positions that you can contribute in as possible, because that's going to give you more opportunities to play, isn't it?
It is indeed. What role did Randall play?
So Randall basically did what Liam Gillian was doing, left wing. I guess you could argue that their formation was a bit more of a like 4-2-2-2, but it's also just kind of a 4-4-2, 4-2-4, whatever, with the ball out of the ball, whatever. These things, like,
yeah,
you got a look on your face there, but
well,
I mean is when you've got the ball, your wingers are playing high level with the strikers, right? When you don't have the ball, they sit deeper, so you sort of have 4 and a 4 to block it off a bit more, that kind of thing. But it's really no different than what Gillian was doing already.
Yeah, you're right. So, because there's a lot of like in the footballing rounds, there's a lot of formation chat. It's like, what formation are they going to play? What formation are they lining up in? But watching Auckland FC and then watching a lot of Phoenix, I don't think formation really matters, because they just kind of rotate through positions, and it's like this is how we defend. This is the structure of our defense, but that can quickly change to something else defensively, as well as looking completely different with the ball. So coming from outside football, I'm like, formation chat doesn't really intrigue me, because it's just kind of like, okay, is he a wide player? It's like me with like middle forwards, edge forwards, small forwards. I just create positions a bit avant-garde, but like I think football, it's just I'm thinking, okay, Randall, he was a wide player in that game. Gillian has been a wide player. Max Mata is a striker. Mai is a attacking playmaker type of position, as opposed to no, he was the right side midfielder in a 4-4-2 that then transitioned into a 5 whatever, trying to break down the actual formation. But is that Randall's best position, you think? Because you did say he started in that wide role ahead of Gillian. So is Auckland FC better with Randall starting in a wide position ahead of Gillian? Can Randall play a different role? Can he do a Louis Toomey and play in the middle? Can he do other things? Or is it a case of in a obviously full strength Auckland FC, none of them are probably on the field in the starting 11 and the first 11, which is great because that's how strong the squad is. But it kind of seems like, because I've seen Toomey play wide, seen Gillian play out wide, seen Randall play out wide. So they're all kind of competing for a similar role. And I think, as you said, to get the game time, it's the same with the Young Warriors. To get the game time, you're going to have to play a couple different positions because that increases your chances of getting on the field.
Yeah, on the formation thing, Giancarlo Italiano's talked a lot, especially through preseason, about how his teams like they'll like the media will ask him, so what is there going to be a change in formation? And he'll say like, we change formations like 30 times during a game. It's constantly in different situations. We're in different shapes, different expectations of what the players are. It's all so fluid. Like I'm sure top level coaches across the world have been doing this for years, but he's one of the first I've heard, at least certainly in the local scene, where they've actually been like open about the starting formations. Sure, you've got that, but like they don't stay in that shape. Of course, you're not going to. Everything is going to be players have license to swap around and move to different areas, and they're expected to do this kind of stuff. So it's all, yeah. It was nice to get the honesty from him, but also it opens a can of worms where it's like now the formations are just chaos. It just doesn't mean anything anymore.
But you still have this guy plays in a wide role. This guy
Yeah,
plays
but that's the role of the player, which is gets to be a lot more telling of what the tactics are, is what you're asking each player to do rather than the shape. I guess defensive shape, you've got that. Because that's without the ball. So there's, but anyway.
But if you do want to talk the formations, then you got to go, okay, for this 10 minutes, they were playing in this formation. Then for 5 minutes, they switched to that formation, which is way too much. But the Randall Gillian.
When the right winger's got the ball, the left centre back tucks in, or the left, all this kind of, all the different flexibilities, which is just, it's too much. You can't keep up with that.
But that's the point, is that the left back's the left back. The right winger is the right winger. Like they're, regardless
so rather than saying your left back was playing centre back, you're just saying, no, your left back his role was to tuck in, but he's the left back.
Whereas more like, instead of, he was the left back in a back 4, but then he became a left back in a back 3, and he had the wing back there. Like instead of all that, you're just the left back, which means you're a defensive player on the left side of the field, which to me seems like the most logical thing. But the Gillian, Randall, Toomey trio.
So Toomey's a little bit deeper, I think, in the depth chart. Gillian versus Randall is more of a specific two guys competing for the same position. Like Toomey can play minutes out there, but those two are specialists in that role. I think Gillian is the better player. I thought Gillian was the better player when they first signed, even though Randall had a little bit more of a profile. But Jesse Randall, I would say, I think his best domestic season was playing for Wellington Olympic back when they were winning everything, and he played as a left winger predominantly, and led the National League in assists that season. So he was pretty, he was a left winger, and he was pretty fantastic as a left winger. He can play up front. I've seen him do that. He's very, very fast, so it's a bit of a like running in behind kind of option. I don't think he's as effective there though. It can play on the right as well, same as Gillian can play all across the, I wouldn't say Randall I wouldn't put him in that number 10 role, whereas I think Gillian could do a bit of work there playing off another striker. But I would say Liam Gillian is Randall didn't actually do a whole lot in that game, and it was nice to see him get the start. He didn't get a lot of touches. One of the first guys subbed off for Gillian. I think more that might have been a bit of a let's keep Liam Gillian on his toes in his first season in the A-League, and he's had some very promising good work. Like, everyone's been impressed by what he's done, but he hasn't really got the goals or assists. So, keep him on his toes, mix it up a little bit. Also a bit of rotation because they are playing again on Wednesday night. So that's something to consider too. But it was very much like Randall just came in and did the role that Gillian was doing before, and I expect Gillian will probably win that role back again. But it's good to have the depth. It's good to have guys you can alternate in and out. And Randall didn't do much wrong. He didn't get a whole lot done, but it's not like he was making mistakes or giving the ball away or anything like that. Just didn't get a lot of touches. It was that sort of game. I mean, goal from a set piece, goal from a long shot. I think City had more of the ball anyway, and so second half was a lot of just controlling the game with a 3-0 lead, so it wasn't that kind of game for him anyway, but he did all right. And the fact that he was playing at all, the fact that he earned that start shows that he's ripping it in training and keeping everyone competing for his position. He's trying to get himself in there, so good stuff. Good to see the depth being worked out. That's what they need. It's probably what the Wellington Phoenix need, because I've heard Giancarlo Italiano get that one out. Do we count that as a good name? He's Australian, coaching in New Zealand.
I was just about to say with young Marley Francois. I did mention Marley earlier in the show, but he's not a Kiwi, but he's playing for Auckland FC. And if I was going to take that one,
but we do have a Marley Lualawai playing youth team footy for New Zealand, so we can still take that one.
But I was going to take Marley Francois out, so that means Giancarlo is probably out as well.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll have to find another one somewhere. So
Chiefy,
he's mentioned multiple times in recent press stuff about how, like, unprompted as well, about how he's trying to. The next thing he needs to see from his squad is getting a stronger bench so they can maintain like a 90-minute performance of being able to put impactful players out there, which probably doesn't align very well with a couple of weeks in which they've released David Ball, released Oscar Van Hadem, and released Mohamed Altai now most recently. But Altai's being released at a time when Finn Conchi's just come back from injury, and Van Hadem and Ball were barely playing anyway, and the transfer window is open, so I wouldn't be surprised if they've signed a new player or two before the next time they play. Those players won't be available, I wouldn't imagine, next time, but it sounds clear that they're working on something like that, trying to build out the depth, trying to have a good bench the way that Auckland FC kind of already do.
Wellington Phoenix are playing tonight. Chiefy did say, though, that the Altai one was to get him back to his family in Australia, so that's understandable. But he's also mentioned a few times they're in the player market for an overseas player, but he also said he's got a couple of local lads training with the Wellington Phoenix as well. So, I mean, I'm all here for it. If you want to release some players, that's all good. Especially if and when you're just churning out the local talent as the Wellington Phoenix do. But also Auckland FC have done it, because we've mentioned Randall, Gillian, Toomey, McKinlay, and Koulibaly have all stepped up for Auckland FC this season. Most of them, all of them, stepping up from domestic football.
Toomey briefly had a thing at like lower league Finland.
No, but they stepped up to Auckland FC.
But he was playing domestic football beforehand. In which case, Cam Howison as well.
I'm seeing young Kiwis being developed.
But all of those guys, and Joe Knowles as well as third choice goalkeeper. We haven't seen Oliver Middleton yet, young midfielder as well. Right. So there's a couple more where they came from. Cody Phoenix as well was on the bench for this game, didn't get on, but he's a fullback who think came through the Birkenhead system, but most recently playing for Auckland United. And it's funny because from Auckland United to Auckland FC, and it's also funny because his last name is Phoenix and he's playing for the other team. Exactly.
Speaking of formations, the Wellington Phoenix women had a good win, 3-2, comeback victory. I think they were 2-0 down, and there's no formations for the Wellington Phoenix women. because they just go every which way, and it's a good way, especially when they are winning. And this comes after you just did a deep dive on the Wellington Phoenix women pushing for finals footy. They are now fifth, 6 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, 3-2 in their last 5 games. Porirua Park is a fortress, a windy fortress. We do have a deep dive on the website, so I'm sure you're well stocked. So I've got to keep you reined in here. Aside from the, you do love I don't know what you call it, the goal from the corner kick, which seems a lot more prevalent. Olympico, which seems to kind of just be a women's football thing, which is all good. Adds to the funk there, but it was a good winner. It was a good winner. How about that? Especially, I think it's a lot more useful in Wellington where it's windy as crackerjacks, and it's like a home advantage as you can whip in those crosses with the wind and really challenge the opposition goalie. Bit of mana in that victory, coming from behind 2-0 to 3-2. So you wrote about the Wellington Phoenix. Is there anything that you learned from that victory that if you were writing about the Wellington Phoenix today, you'd be like, oh, I got to add that, or anything else that was just fell into alignment with your original views?
Well, you can't spell Manaya without mana, so there's a starter for you. The crazy thing about that, because yes, the Olympico is definitely much more of, not exclusively, you see them a bit, perhaps even a little bit more commonly now in men's football, because you're starting to get a few more sophisticated setups of everyone just crowding out the goalies and whatever.
I've seen a lot of this, and it's not sophisticated. It's just how many dudes can get wrestling together in front of the goal, and let's just make it as hard. Like, there's set piece coaches, and their solution is just get everyone tackling everyone.
Yeah, the sophistication comes from the relative sense of before no one really cared, and now they care enough to say, get in the way. Like, just stand there. We're not seeing intricate in and out runs or anything like that. A little bit here or there. I like the one that Arsenal do where they start their guys at the back post and then they run near post, so the defender's got to turn their backs to follow ball and player from an opposite side.
There was I think it was Nando's goal. Rogerson is getting absolutely manhandled by the goalie, and he's just getting pulled down. He's getting ragdoll. And it's like, well, he's just doing his job. The goalie complained that he was like taken out, but he is like dragging Rogerson down, and everyone forgets about where the ball is. So I did have a little chuckle about that. But the Wellington Phoenix woman, what'd you learn? Anything new? Anything that solidified your opinions?
Well, what was I saying about the Olympicos? It is much more of a women's football thing because you shorter goalkeepers. It's just that simple. Like, keepers are a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit easier to whip it over. But the thing about Manaya Elliott's one, she's a right-sided player whipping that in with their left foot. And she was taking all of those right-sided corner kicks, and she was taking them all left-footed. And most of them were pretty good deliveries. Like, that was a thing that got a lot of buzz about Michaela Foster, was someone who, 2-footed. She could take corners from either side and their in-swing is regardless. Well, Manaya Elliott was doing that with swinging in. She didn't just swing in good corner deliveries. She scored a 99th minute, whatever it was, winning goal from an in-swinging corner with her off foot. Thought that was kind of crazy because she doesn't really feel like a player she's very quite right-sided, likes to run in straight lines and whatever. Doesn't really necessarily feel like the type of player who would have that, but apparently she just does. So I learned that. Other than that game, I think, was much more about reinforcing the stuff I'd already sort of learned about them in the team, that they're like the good performance in the first half that was spoiled by a couple silly concessions, one right at the start of the first half, one right at the end of the first half, and them not taking their own chances, combined with just a much stronger, more efficient performance in the second half, where they score a couple really nice goals, score 3 really nice goals, ended up winning the thing on the back of that. Do low-key think that Anneli Longo was offside for her goal, but they created enough chances. They could have got one from somewhere else. They certainly should have got one from a couple of other chances that they created, particularly in the first half. So that second half thing has been a big emphasis of them. Like they've had those games, Sydney at home, Western Sydney away, it was Perth at home. Now this game, Newcastle. The other ones were sort of like 0-0 at halftime, playing really well, look like you should be much further ahead. They're not, but then they score early in the second half and ended up winning, 3 games in which that was the case. All 3 of those games were broken open by long range goals. They at least mixed it up from that sense in this game. But yeah, the second half adjustments, the substitutes coming in and playing really well. Exactly what we're saying the men's team is trying to find, exactly what we're saying Auckland FC is pretty good at, although they didn't really need their bench for anything other than closing the door in the Melbourne City game. But they have used it in the past with a lot of their late goals. Wellington Phoenix Women's been doing the same thing all season. They got a really settled squad. It's the same. I think this is now 7 games in a row, something like that, where they've had the same match day 16, except for a couple weeks where Amy Daniele had a concussion and Brooke Neary came in as the backup goalkeeper. Well, the backup goalkeepers haven't really played much and certainly haven't played over that stint. So other than that, the outfielders on the bench are all the same players, but they rotate the starting 11 a lot, sort of being able to say, for this matchup, we want Zoe McMeekins runs at right back, or for this game, we want Olivia Kelly doing that position or whatever. So there's a bit of that. But very settled team, hardly any injuries, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, strong second half performances, playing very well up until the final whistle. Like this overcoming maybe a little bit of adversity. In this case, a lot of adversity because they were 2-0 down at halftime. It's the second time in the team's history they've won a game after being trailing at halftime. So dramatic victory, very exciting victory. Crazy how it happened, but in its way, just a continuation of the good form that they've been in for a month, probably more than that, probably 2 months at this point.